3, 2, 1. We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson here. Mike Santagata. Mike, what is up?
Not much. In a hotel again for work. It's great. I don't love the travel, but I am in the Little League World Series capital, Williamsport. Yeah.
Ooh.
Nothing exciting here. Nothing very exciting. But they've got like little art pieces and stuff of like kids playing baseball. I'm sure if I drive and figure it out, I could find the field.
I'm sure you could. Well, speaking of, I wouldn't even say this is exciting news. I think this is surprising news. We'll go ahead and get to it because one of the main focuses is the offensive line talk. And I think we were in an agreement that the team would probably keep La'el Collins as more of a depth piece, to be determined on what the offensive line looks like when they would be able to bring La'el Collins back. But there was an announcement this afternoon. The Bengals made it official. They actually have released La'el Collins. It could be multiple things. Zach Taylor will actually talk to the media on Wednesday, and I'm sure he'll be asked about it, and maybe he'll share a little bit of more information. But as of now, looks like they're going to roll with who they have in their offensive line room. Were you a little surprised with that news?
Yeah, because this team to me is what should be a buyer and going kind of pushing the chips in rather than being a team that's willing to sell their depth away or in this case cut it. I do think it's interesting. I don't think this is going to screw them for sure or anything like that. They have dealt with a lot of offensive line injuries. Could be a statement of how they feel about the depth guys behind him, Deontay Smith, Jackson Carman, whoever else. It could also just be Collins wanted to go start somewhere and they honored that request, so they let him go. Or it could be that they have some exciting news coming soon because this does free $7 million of cap space. $7 million of cap space. There's quite a few reasons this could work. Fourth reason, not what we're hoping for, but it could just be his recovery isn't going well. And they're just like, whatever reason, but we're going to think it's one of the other three where, his recovery is going fine because I'm rooting for him as a player to still go out there and be able to play on Sundays. But yeah, interesting news. I don't think it's terrible news for the Bengals. Jonah was always going to be the right tackle. I think a lot of people came up with different scenarios for Collins stepping in. And I also think people think Collins played better than he did last year. And I want Collins to play well. I thought he was a top 5 right tackle in Dallas, but he wasn't that for the Bengals. And it's looked like it was mostly injury related. So does that get better? He's doing a ton of rehab. He's not, really resting. But yeah, surprising move, but the reason will be interesting to monitor if we ever even find out why they did it.
Yeah, I want to say his agent is Peter Schaefer, Joe Mixon's agent. So you never know what could be leaked on the agent side. But as of now, we just don't know. I know the reaction right away is, oh no, we don't like Jonah as a right tackle. What are you doing? La'el was going to come back and take his spot. And, I agree with you. I think they have faith in Jonah Williams. And, it is a little scary when you think of the depth. But if you look around the league right now, when it comes to offensive line play, not a lot of depth on teams when it comes to the offensive line room. And we just don't know. And I agree with you. I'm rooting for La'el as a player. Maybe this was something that you get the week 1 games and his agent, and he talks to his agent and they're like, you know what? There's some teams that could use my help and I'm feeling good. And I don't see myself, and I could see the Bengals front office and Frank Pollock and all of the coaches being completely honest with them. Like, here's your role on the team. And he's like, hey, look, I kind of feel like I could be a starter on another team. We just don't know. It could be absolutely anything. And as you mentioned, the last thing was the health. We don't know how he's feeling. Is he 100%? Is he close to 100%? Obviously, they wouldn't be able to activate him anyways until after the week 4 game. But yeah, wish him all the best. It's kind of crazy because if you remember when the Bengals did sign him in free agency, it was a huge thing in Cincinnati. He was at the Kemba Mall Fans were trying to get him here. It was absolutely crazy. And it's really unfortunate because he really never lived up to what he was with the Dallas Cowboys. It just it never worked out for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's really unfortunate because that was going to be a huge signing for them. But right now they're hoping Jonah Williams works out for at least this last year on his contract, and then Orlando Brown on the left side. So yeah, that's all I really have for La'el Collins. Any other thoughts?
No, just unfortunate. I think we didn't talk enough about the back surgery in between his year in Dallas and his only year in Cincinnati. And I think that had a profound effect on him as a player. You hope he gets better. Back injuries, back surgeries, everything involving the back, scary for big guys that are going to use that back really often. And it sucked to see him at least lose 1 year of high-level play because of it. I think he was serviceable, but straight up, I thought Jonah was better at left tackle than he was at right tackle. I know a lot of people don't think that, but I did. And I think a lot of people are already getting on Jonah this week for giving up a sack to Myles Garrett, which it's Myles Garrett. It's kind of interesting to see how people react. And I assume we're just going to kind of roll right into the offensive line here. It's kind of interesting to see how people react to Orlando Brown, who I thought was the best offensive lineman in the game. That's not saying a ton, but I thought he was, a solid starter considering the opponent. But Orlando Brown give up pressures to Myles Garrett. He's kind of like, oh, that's Myles Garrett, dude. He does that to everybody. And then you see Jonah on the other side give up one, and it's like, I hate that guy. He can never block Myles Garrett. It's just there's a great meme about this. I don't know, I might post it, but it's just like, like conventionally attractive guy. Hi, I'm Orlando Brown. I gave up a couple pressures to Myles Garrett. And it's like, oh, that's okay. And then, unattractive guy comes back. It's like, hi, I'm Jonah Williams. I gave a couple pressures to Myles Garrett. It's like, hello, human resources.
No, I agree with you. I actually talked to Duke Manyweather. The full interviews over on Cincinnati Bengals Talk, and I asked about Myles Garrett. I said, how do you defend Myles Garrett when you're an offensive lineman? He said pretty much only the top 2 tackles in the league would even stand a chance against him. So I think people have to remember that. The thing is, it's under a microscope. For one, it's Jonah Williams. And 2, the Cincinnati Bengals have to see the Cleveland Browns twice a year. And unfortunately, right now, it feels like Cleveland has their number. So you're going to look at that a little different when it comes to this offensive line. But yeah, it's Myles Garrett. You mentioned it on our podcast last week that you feel like he could be the defensive player of the year. And right now, it's really looking like he has a big lead in a tier 1 for Myles Garrett. But yeah, the Jonah Williams and Orlando Brown, I think we have to remember when it comes to that first week in Cleveland. I'm not making excuses for him, but let's give him a shot. Let's give him a chance here. And Joe Burrow was completely off. I mean, we'll get more into what his tape looked like and his game in just a moment, but just relax with the offensive lineman. And it was something that we had a conversation with, again, kind of going back to our interview last year with Duke, and he mentioned it again. There's not several new pieces, but you're moving Jonah to right tackle. You have a brand new Orlando Brown, Cordell Wilson in year 2. Alex Kapp is back out there, and Ted Karras. Again, it's going to take some reps. They didn't get the preseason reps. That is over. There's nothing they can do about it now. They are moving on to regular season in week 2. And you just have to remember, it's going to take a few games. Unfortunately, you hate that, but that's just kind of what you're dealing right now with this offensive line.
Yeah, just like last year a little bit. But I also I'm not basing my opinion on the offensive line based off what happened against what looked like maybe the best defensive line in football. It was great. It was a really good unit. You've got Myles Garrett, who is my pick for Defensive Player of the Year, because I think Schwartz and company are going to kind of let him pin his ears back and really go after guys. And that's what they did. They were using him in interesting ways. And man, like the 3rd or 4th play of the game where he's doing that crossover thing right in front of.
I need that to go away.
Man, if I'm Ted Karras there in that situation, I'm holding. I'm not letting him beat me. Let it be like, oh, he drew a holding penalty, or maybe I'll just cut block him or something. But there's no way. There's no way I can lose on this one. I've got to cheat. I've been outmatched before. I remember I was outmatched in a high school game once. This guy was like 300 pounds. I was 180-pound left guard, and he could move really well. That was my thing, was I could move better than a lot of these big guys. So that's how it worked. This guy could move better than me, and he was bigger than me. He was stronger than me. Now I just start cut blocking him every play. It's like every play is like, what'd you do? I didn't stand a chance on actually blocking him, so I just took him out from the waist down.
Yeah, I'm gonna be really happy when that video goes away. It's everywhere right now, and but it kind of reminds me of
Myles Garrett's gonna win Defensive Player of the Year, and that's gonna be what plays up to his Defensive Player of the Year announcement.
100%, but it reminds me of on defense, Denzel Ward was grabbing Ja'Marr because he's like, that's a touchdown. I got to get I can't let him go. There's going to be pass interference because it's 6. I know it. So sometimes it's smart to just draw the penalty. And yeah, for Ted Karras, man, I hated to see that for him. But yeah, so I don't know. I feel like it's so easy to point to the offensive line. It's such and it's fair. I know what the past 2 years have looked like. And honestly, I was more of a fan of it last year, not counting this year, but just more of a fan than other people were of the offensive line last year. I felt like it was okay. It was good enough. And look, I want them to be better. You have to protect your franchise. That's the most important thing when it comes to Joe Burrow. I do want him to have time because I think when they all get it together and Joe gets more reps out there, it's going to be huge for him. And I look forward to that. But overall, I think that's enough on the offensive line for now.
I had 2 quick things.
Go ahead.
One, the Browns were the Browns were averaging their first pressure of any pass play in under 2 seconds. And that's just, you got to have a better performance than that. I wouldn't classify this as a good offensive line performance, but like I said, I think it's a week 1 game. It's against a team that always gets up for this game. It's against maybe the best defensive line in football. It's against, a guy that lets his guys really pin his ears back. And I don't know if the Bengals did enough to try to limit that. So then they fell behind, and you fall behind in a game like this and you couldn't move the ball early downs. It just really fed into a situation where the Browns pass rushers got to go be awesome pass rushers. But yeah, under 2 seconds is almost unheard of for your average first time with pressure. There are plays Burrow hits the back foot of his drop and he's getting that ball out because there's a guy coming at him, or he doesn't even finish his drop on a couple of them. He's scrambling. Got to have a better performance than that. And I was hoping with a revamped offensive line, there wouldn't be too many of these type of games, but it is what it is. And you move on. I think Burrow's talked a lot about it, like we're not defined by week 1. Nobody is. Like the offensive line isn't defined by week 1. These wide receivers aren't. Nobody's defined by this week 1 game. Even if it was a disappointing performance, I expect them to at least somewhat bounce back in their upcoming game. But we'll talk a lot more about that on Thursday.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with you. Give it a couple games, and it's fair to look at them and say, hey, I don't think you're prepared as an offense. I mean, defensively, I feel like they did their part. You can't have them on the field that long. It was poor by the Cincinnati Bengals all around, honestly, on the offense and special team side. I try to give defense a little bit of a break, though, because they gave the Cincinnati Bengals plenty of chances to win the game. Kind of want to get on to Joe Burrow's performance, and then obviously we'll extend on this conversation. A lot was happening. I hate this part, but I feel like I have to bring everything up. Joe didn't get the reps. Joe didn't have another offseason. It's really getting, I'm sure, annoying for Joe Burrow to not have those preseasons and training camp. I think we can look at Joe Burrow and say, look, sometimes he can be Superman, but it's really hard to miss out on your offseason. And it's really telling in the last 2 years. He's starting out slow. It has taken him a little while. He's obviously, we don't know the percentage on the calf on how he's feeling. He said last week he has good days and he has bad days. I think it was smart. If you watch that Monday Night Football game, when it comes to the playing field and it's wet out there, you don't want Joe to do too much. We know he can be pretty mobile, and I know you were able to kind of go back and watch the tape, but it just felt like he was off with his receivers. It wasn't the same old Joe, and he really couldn't get a grip on the football, and that felt like the most important thing when it comes to what we saw from number 9.
Yeah, a lot of opportunities for him too. I think the way Schwartz plays defense, and for the wide receivers, but the way Schwartz plays defense, he's testing them. He's like saying, until you show me you're going to beat me, I'm not going to cheat over the top. I'm going to take away the underneath, throw it deep, beat my corners. And I think there are plays the Bengals wide receivers may have But like you said, with Burrow gripping the football issue, he was very, very inaccurate. I just think there's so much, previous experience to say this is a outlier. This is a game that probably won't happen again, at least this year, and probably not for, I would say, a couple of years. So it's interesting. But yeah, I wonder how different the conversations are if Burrow hits T on that slot fade and leads him rather than throws it short and lets Delpit get back into the play and break it up. And maybe that doesn't go for a touchdown, but now you're in the goal line and you score one there. And then he also hits T on that fake screen that he stepped up and then threw the ball. And if he put it in T's zip code, it's a touchdown, but he threw it out of bounds over his head. So I wonder how different the conversation is in that, because, I mean, that's such a big swing. We don't know how anything would go otherwise with that, and maybe they still lose the game. I'm not trying to say they'd win the game that way. I just think that there may be less conversations about the play calling, and it felt so much like we were back in the start of last year, with everything. It was like the play calling, the targeted routes charts, everything started coming out, and the Frank Pollock, fire him.
Fire Zach Taylor.
Fire Zach Taylor. Don't let him play call, blah, blah, blah. I've never liked it. I do feel like sometimes the fan base, they love the players and they don't want to criticize the players so much. So they kind of move that criticism right at the coaching staff. And I think there's stuff that Taylor could have done better in that game. But so much of that was one of, if not the worst performance of Joe Burrow's career. And they couldn't get anything going because of it. And the offensive line was allowing pressure. So this is how you get the disaster scenario, right? The offensive line keeps allowing quick pressure. The quarterback, and they're only running quick game. They ran 1 5-step drop. Other than that, it was all 3-step drops or quick game. The quarterback he's the most inaccurate he has ever been. He can't throw the ball in a guy's zip code right now. He can't put it anywhere near them, even though he's getting looks that he usually feasts on. The wide receivers, they aren't having the best day against a really physical and talented cornerback group. So all three of those things go wrong. I mean, like, the only guy I pointed to in my mind of like, that guy, I liked what he did on offense. It was pretty much just Joe Mixon. Yeah, because I don't even think the run blocking was great, and I think that's why things like the success rate was so low. And when you're looking at a lot of advanced stats, it didn't look that great. Some of that is he had a couple big runs and a lot of not great runs, but I think he made the most out of pretty much every opportunity. He looked shifty, he looked explosive, he looked healthy. I think it's the big one. He looked powerful. He was able to stay on his feet through contact. There was a lot to like. I thought the vision was there. I was just like, this is what I kept hoping for and kind of saying, like, I think we might get this, because I thought Mixon was hurt last year. A lot of last year. Starting in week 1, he left the game with an ankle injury. And this looked like pre-injury Mixon. This looked like 2021 Mixon. If you can get that, even though he's a little older, then I think that's good this is really good for this offense.
Yeah, I want to get a little more on Joe Mixon. One of the things the Cincinnati Bengals did, and I honestly didn't have a problem with it, because it gave me, I know we kind of give that comparison to this game being the week 1 of last year, but I got the Halloween vibes because it was so lopsided. And I got to a point where it was close. They were down by 10 at halftime. And I'm like, I don't think they can win this football game, even being down 10 points.
I literally said when it happened, I went, oh, that's an insurmountable lead. Even though it's clearly not. But, it's just like one of those feelings like, I don't know if this offense can go down there and score a touchdown.
Well, and it's I wouldn't say that against a lot of the teams they face, but I would say that against the Cleveland Browns. I just said, they're down by 10. There's really no way. You have to get out front. You have to put points on the board first so you can control the game. And they just weren't able to do that. And unfortunately, it was a brutal game for Joe Burrow, and it's okay to point that out. He's going to be fine. I do feel like he'll bounce back. We don't know if it's in week 2, week 3, but it wasn't in week 1. And they decided to take Joe out of the game early. And I honestly didn't have a problem with it. It was about 5 minutes left on the clock. I thought the game was over. I think you need to be smart in those conditions. He's your franchise quarterback. Put him on the sideline. Did you have any thoughts on that?
I just remember thinking like, oh, it's a little early, but it's like, actually trying to dissect it, I was like, no, it's fine, because I'm looking at, I believe Trent Williams, best left tackle in the league, got hurt in a game that was pretty well decided. They sent Cam Hayward in that same game. On the other side, they sent Cam Hayward back out there when the team was, not clearly going to lose, but down 3 scores. And that is what you're looking at if you, not saying that would have happened if you sent Burrow back out there, but I'm saying that, like that's the concern. That you send Burrow back out there, you try to really claw out of this very slim chance that you could make this a game, and then he gets hurt. And he had a calf strain. And we, I think, downplayed it a little bit. I know I did.
I did 100%.
I thought like, hey, it's a calf strain. He's dealt with these before, but I think that's a big reason why too. It's just he is saying I have good days and bad days, et cetera, et cetera. So it's lingering a tiny bit. That's not an excuse for how he played, but it's an excuse for why you would pull him early. Like why leave a guy that has, something that's hampering him, even if it's just 5%. And it's just like something that's just like, I can still feel it, like even if it's not terrible, I can still feel it. Why send him back out there in a game that's decided? So I was fine with it. I had no issues.
I don't know if you saw this on tape, and honestly, we'll get a bigger picture because, Zach Taylor felt pretty confident. They got out of that game pretty healthy. And you take that right now. If you're going to lose and you're going to lose the game, you're like, hey, I'll take health every day of the week. And one of the things I think a lot of people were pointing out, and maybe we're making too much of this, and we'll really find out Wednesday, because if a player has to get treatment, they will be listed, or that will be listed on the injury report on Wednesday after practice. But some people said that it looked like it was like a thumb issue for Joe Burrow when you're watching the broadcast, and we had to talk about getting a grip of the ball. I know the ball was really wet. Did you see anything that would make you think when you were watching the rewatch of the game that
he got hit on the first play of the game in the hand? That's as much as I know. We both don't like doing the try to diagnose the player's injury. So I got a few of those questions like, did you see anything about his thumb? I was like, he got hit, I guess. I didn't see anything I didn't see somebody grab his thumb and pull it. You probably know more than me. I don't focus on that thing. I don't try to go back. There's some people that I think go through tape and stuff is to find, I want to see the injury and see if it looked bad. That happens quite a bit with can you show the play that this guy got hurt on? And then I will say, I still like those people more than I like the people that are like, look at all these holds I found, or
you're right. You're right.
Penalties. I'm like, look, man, don't make the refs a part of it.
So far, they've been okay. The officials, I'm not going to lie. It hasn't been too crazy.
They were not the reason the Bengals lost.
No. And I'll be completely honest with you. Believe me, I can't stand officiating in the NFL. And and I don't even get into that, but I'm just saying, I don't think they've been that bad after 1 week of football. It's been okay. But overall, I think you bring up a good point. We'll see Wednesday when the Bengals have their practice. They'll have their injury report. And like I said, if Joe had to get any treatment for anything, it'll be on there. I expect him to still be on there for the calf strain, and just something that they're going to have to monitor. I hope it's something that, and we heard about it all off season during training camp. It's something that could linger and he could be dealing with it all season. You hope it's something that, I'm sure it's in your head too, while you're out there playing and dealing with it when you have good days and bad days. But we just hope Joe is healthy. That's the biggest thing, but we'll find out more when they hit the practice field on Wednesday, as we're recording this on a Tuesday night. Let's get to the run game. You already talked about Joe Mixon, and that was the positive on the offensive side. People after the game, we talk about calling out Zach Taylor, calling this offense out. Why didn't you run the ball, Zach Taylor? Tell me why they didn't run the ball.
Well, I think so this is one thing that I think they can improve in this is on the very, very small chance that your quarterback can't do anything. Maybe it's weather related, maybe it's injury related, maybe it's whatever. I do think this offense needs to figure out how can we win this game still? Because you can't just go throw the hands up and go, well, that's it. Because imagine this game is like the AFC Championship game, and you just can't figure out how to run an offense because your quarterback can't grip the ball or whatever's going on. Man, that would really stink. You get blown out in a game like that. So I'm kind of with them a little bit on like maybe they should have tried to lean a little bit more into the run game, but the run game wasn't consistent enough for them to really lean on it. I think that's the issue, is that their early down runs, there was a 12-yarder and a 22-yarder, and almost everything else was 3 yards and less. And that's not a way to make a living in the NFL. You could think like, wow, 3 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, that's a first down every time. That is not how it was. Not consistently 3 yards either. It was like 0, 3, 1, 2, and now you're letting the pass rusher tee off a little bit because they know you're going to throw in at least 3rd and long, and you're probably throwing in 2nd and long. So run game has to be a little bit more consistent there, even though Mixon was averaging, I think, 5 yards a carry at halftime. Mm-hmm. After half is the Browns kind of tightened it up a little bit and really limited those early down runs. I think that they could have used some different concepts and gone at them a little bit differently too. Main thing I just keep thinking of is this team throws the ball so much, right? Like they throw the ball all the time. They have one of the best quarterbacks. And what is in my mind, the first thing I think of, like, what should you do when you throw the ball a lot as one of your changeups? The draw, halfback draw, fake the pass and hand it off. I don't think they ran that a single time. And Schwartz also plays these wide fronts where these guys are pinning their ears back. They're trying to penetrate. They're trying to get upfield. Let them get upfield, then hand it off and let Mixon go. You couldn't run quarterback draw in this game. I mean, calf strain, everything. You don't want Burrow taking hits like that or even trying to exert a lot of force quickly onto his lower legs. But, man, I kept thinking, like, I don't know if it would have worked that well, but halfback draw here would feel nice. And they also didn't get to any trap or wham play until Jake Browning was in. And I was like, man, usually a team tries this like first quarter against the Jim Schwartz defense just because of the angles. Like, you got that wide 3 tech. You don't really have to push him out very far. You just kind of get up to him and hold that block, and you've got a lane. They didn't really try it very often. They also ran what's called dart one time, and it was a good run from Chris Evans. It's a 5-man run play, so you don't need a tight end. You don't need a fullback. And you just bring that tackle. It works out like power, but you bring the tackle around and through the hole, and they brought Orlando Brown through. Worked great. Never went back to it. And I was just like, why is this? I know there's so much that happens in a game for a head coach. Like, the bullets are flying. Everything's going wrong, too. So I think that could be the issue, but this was one of the plays on their scripted plays, their first 15, and I just couldn't. He needs an assistant to just go like, hey, what about that play that worked in the first 15? Why don't we get back to that? Why don't we try that again? Or just something like that, and maybe script in a few more draws early on, and just because they're good body blows too, to get a feel for how the defense is going to play you. You run a draw, and the coverage is going to show what the coverage is going to do. So, like, okay, so, you know, like, they're playing a lot of single high in this game, and I don't have to take a hit on this. I'm just going to hand it off and let my running back go. But it's a way to see how the defense plays you, because a lot of defenses don't play what they normally do against the Bengals. They kind of change it up, although Schwartz played what he always does, and it worked out really well for him.
I know it's one game, so it's a sample size, and it's easy to say overreaction when it comes to week 1. But with this offense, does it feel pretty and again, they're limiting Joe Burrow a little bit in that game, so it's a really small sample size. But does it feel kind of boring where it shouldn't be?
I mean, in that game, yeah.
I mean,
it's also exciting.
But they should have like some creativity. There should be something new. What do you spend your off season doing? And it just felt like pretty predictable.
Yeah. Well, to me, I think that some of that's limited because they didn't trust. They treated this game like it was a mismatch, offensive line to defensive line. They didn't take big drops. They pretty much ran quick game, and they ran 3-step drops. And if you're thinking in your mind, like, how can we, because we have to push the ball down the field at some point, because otherwise they're going to key in underneath like they were kind of doing. So how can you do that if you don't have time for a guy to go 12 yards and then cut inside? Straight line. That's like a straight line is the fastest way to get there. So they're throwing those go balls a lot. I think people got upset about that. If the slot fades similar, still a straight line, you're not trying to make any cuts. It felt like they didn't think, and rightfully so, with the under 2 seconds for an average pressure from the Browns, that this offensive line could hold up to run any deeper developing concepts. I think maybe there's some stuff you could have got to. Maybe you get into that look that they got into a few times, that they get into once in a while, I should say, where it's empty, but they leave a running back and a tight end basically attached to the offensive line. And that guy's job is pretty much just hold up that end, just hold up the end, and then whatever you did, like leak out to the flat eventually, or just become a check down option. And then you've got your three guys that are running routes down the field, and they're, you know, like good players, and now you can actually have them cut and make these moves and run these routes that you get excited about. What I think really was missing, I talked about the draw play to try to keep them a little honest, just finding ways to get that defensive line to slow down. And then to go with that, I had all these thoughts on how are the Bengals going to really stress defenses. I thought there'd be more play action out of the shotgun. They ran an RPO on the first play. It got destroyed because Irv Smith missed the block on, I believe it was Zadarius Smith, who gets a hit on Burrow as he throws it. And not a great way to start your season. But yeah, it felt a lot like, it felt like when they fell behind and everything was going wrong and nothing they wanted to do was going to work. I think the looks they had were good. I think the looks they had were fine. And I wonder if we are even having anything like this conversation if they just connect on some of those deep balls rather than just out of reach, or, you know, the cornerback wins at the catch point, which isn't common against this wide receiver group, or if they're just more accurate throws on some of those more open ones that we're even having this conversation, because it comes up every time this offense slows down a little bit. This is the way Burrow likes to play. It's not, he doesn't want to do the San Francisco 49ers offense. He doesn't want to do that old McVay offense. I think that a little bit of it is attacking the middle of the field and doing all of that motion and everything else. He likes it kind of like Peyton Manning did, where it's static pre-snap and he can look at the coverage and how guys are playing. Manning used to just see, like, have a guy like a slot corner. It's like, I know that guy can't disguise for anything, so I'm going to see him, know what I'm going to get. I don't know if Burrow's doing the same thing, but it feels like he likes that static, that keeping everything no motion and spread out so he can really use his awesome vision and see the field openings and work that way. But yeah, I think that there is a little bit missing here. And to me, it's a way to combine your shotgun run game with your play action game, where the RPOs are fine. They're just not big play hitters. And they obviously didn't work in that game. But I want to see some real play action, sell it, maybe even use some extra guys to look like they're blocking tight end, or maybe two tight end sets to do this, and just really sell the run action so that T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are working down the field one-on-one against guys, because I trust them to win that, and not just go balls, but also plays where they're going to break and move and, you know, try to get open and beat leverage. So yeah, I think you are right that there could be a little bit more added in, but I think taking the idea of just going like, why can't they just do what Mike McDaniel does?
That is a good point. That's out there.
It's a little too simple of an idea. Just like, why can't they just completely change the offense to something that Burrow hasn't really liked doing? And it's like, well, the quarterback doesn't like doing that, and they've had a top 5 offense 2 years in a row. I'm not overly concerned about that. I think the playoff offense hasn't been perfect, but I think the playoff offense is just, you know, they faced a lot of good teams. And I also think the playoff offense has dealt with a lot of offensive line issues. Hakeem Adeniji has started every playoff game of Joe Burrow's career, and he did not start every regular season game of Joe Burrow's career.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild to think about. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what they look like against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll get to more of that on Thursday podcast. But I will add this before we get kind of to the bigger picture of the AFC side of it too. There is a rumor that Joe Burrow got his haircut. So maybe the haircut will change things. Maybe he's like, you know what? We got the haircut. We'll see. We'll see tomorrow when he has his Wednesday press conference to see if he's like, maybe this will help our offense a little bit.
At least we're no longer looking at the haircut as like, that means he has more money, so he signed his extension.
Oh my god, could you imagine if we were still doing that? Yeah, I'm glad that part is over. But yeah, let's get to the AFC side. I think the overall picture, the biggest thing you can really learn from week one, I think Kyle Brandt over on NFL Network said it. Week one is a liar. You watched that Monday Night Football game last night and you listen to all the national shows today. And of course, Aaron Rodgers is going to be the headline. But the overall thing is Josh Allen. Are the Bills going to be bad this year? This is what's going on with the Kansas City Chiefs. Are they going to be okay? They're 0-1. Will they get the number one seed? The Cincinnati Bengals, they're terrible. They're going to pick number one. And look, we don't know what's going to happen this season. But overall, it just seems like the overreaction out there is a little wild right now after week one. The Cincinnati Bengals, the Buffalo Bills, and the Kansas City Chiefs are all starting the season with the same record.
Yeah. The three biggest contenders, 0-1. Then you even look at the Jags were in a real game with the Colts, and they're probably the favorite for the AFC South. The Chargers lost. Obviously, somebody had to win that game. The Dolphins won. So when you start looking at some of the wildcard teams that can maybe jump up, make that push, some of them weren't really playing all that well throughout a lot of that game. I think Chargers, Dolphins, both teams, both offenses were playing great. Defenses, not so much. I don't know if everybody else watched this, but the most insane thing I ever saw was, not ever, but probably the most insane thing I'll see this year was J.C. Jackson defensive pass interference with no time left on a ball thrown to like the 20. I was like, dude, let him catch it. Like, who cares? Just tackle him after. Push him after he catches the ball. I was like, oh my God. Free 3 points. They lost by 2.
Yeah, that game was actually, after watching the 1 o'clock games, I really enjoyed the Dolphins Chargers game. If you like offense, yeah, that was a good one. I liked that. But overall, I think, look, you never know what's going to happen. You look at the New York Jets, and absolutely crazy to see Aaron Rodgers go down with just maybe 3 snaps out there for the New York Jets. A huge game, one of the AFC contenders. And look, their defense is legit, and they showed it on Monday Night Football. But to be determined on what their quarterback room looks like. Right now, they're rolling with Zach Wilson. So I think everybody just they have to remember there are 16 regular season games left. Anything could happen in any game. Health is extremely important. Winning your division is extremely important, but we have to calm down of what you see in that first game. Especially kind of just going back to the Bengals offense when they're not getting reps together. I do think that's important. I know a lot of people will say, well, Joe Burrow should be really familiar with his wide receivers. Why does he need those extra reps? It's important. That stuff is still a big deal. And that was one of the things that he said in his press conference right before he had the calf strain, is he was looking forward to getting every rep possible in training camp. And that's a big deal for a quarterback. So, overall in the AFC picture, how you feeling?
Fine. Yeah. I mean, maybe the Browns are contenders. And then you lost to head-to-head. I will say the one thing with, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Bengals all losing games, the Chiefs are the one that lost the game out of conference. That was like the one they could lose. So now you're in a situation where you're basically a half game back of the Chiefs, even if you're tied with the Bills. So that is unfortunate. But overall, I feel fine. I mean, you get to play against the Bills. You get to play against the Chiefs. You get to play against the Jaguars. You don't get to play against some of the other teams, but you get to play against the Ravens. You get to play against the Browns again. You get to control your own season in the division for the most part. And I think you're fine. Does this hurt? To me, in the AFC, this game, it's one game. You're not hurt too much. Nobody's going 17-0. What this hurt to me was the idea, I think everybody was getting a little hyped up on could Joe Burrow win MVP? You have a stat line like this. Okay. I'm not saying it's gone, but I do think that I don't know. It's hard to come back from that. You basically lose a game of stats, right? No touchdowns, 80-something yards.
No interceptions.
No interceptions. So, it's not a complete disaster.
I wish you would have had some. It would make it feel a little better.
I don't get that.
No, I just I don't know. We won't go back to it. I think that's one of the games that, look, they went back on Monday, they watched the tape, they threw it in the trash, and then they go to the Baltimore Ravens, where it doesn't get easier. It really doesn't. And you don't want to go in an 0-2 hole. This is what I don't like to hear right now, and I think it's out there in the social media world. Well, the Bengals started 0-1 last year. Well, the Bengals started 0-2 last year. It's a little different when you're seeing your division rivals in back-to-back weeks. You don't want to do that. You don't want to put yourself in there. And you're playing at home. You're playing at home for the next 2 weeks. You have to take advantage of that. And it's just extremely important. I think what we really learned from week 1 and what we should learn over the last couple of seasons, look, I know it's really exciting to think about #1 seed, go to the AFC Championship game, go to the Super Bowl, all of that stuff. You got to take it 1 week at a time in the NFL because you just do not know what's going to happen. It's just one game, keep your health, and try to win a really tough division. Even though the division in the AFC North looked pretty sloppy after 1 week, it's not telling of what could happen the rest of the football season. We'll see what happens. And right now, you got to dig yourself out of being 0-1, and you get that opportunity against another AFC North team at home on Sunday.
You do. And I think it's also probably a game that they have watched back a lot, a team that they have watched back a lot, their games against them, because they kind of struggled against the Ravens defense. Okay. So it's almost the opposite of Jim Schwartz, where Jim Schwartz, he wanted that ball to come out quick. He wanted to pressure guys, and his disguise was moving from single high to too high, or, playing a lot of single high, and then the changeup was too high. Whereas Macdonald, his fastball's too high, and he's going to change up to single high from a too high look. And I think to him, he wants to be able to hold that ball an extra half second or so that his pass rush can get home. They don't have the guys that the Browns have, so you got to win another way. Be interesting. I think this is a game that they could make a statement. Like that first week, it was just weather. And we are good. This offense is still dominant. This team is still great. We're still a Super Bowl level team. Or do you come out there and it just looks like, man, is that another defense that just has the Bengals number in their division? Because that's what you're not hoping for.
No.
And even if you win those games, they turn into like, we're the better team. We should win this game by more than this. I think if I was, the coach, I would look at the Mike Macdonald games and I would be like, look, I never want to get into a situation where we are in a tight battle with Snoop Huntley for a playoff game ever again. Like, I want to figure out this defense. If I'm Burrow, I'm saying the same thing. I want to figure this defense out and how we can exploit it rather than, trying to rely on the defense getting, they got a touchdown the one game, but, the defense kind of doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah, we'll get more to the preview and your Twitter questions on Thursday's show, looking ahead for the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens matchup at Paycor Stadium, the home opener on Sunday, kickoff 1 p.m. What do you have up on All Bengals?
Right now, it's just my quick thoughts off of the first game of the year. We didn't even talk about it. Special teams was atrocious. Missed field goal, missed snap, bad punts, bad return that only got to the 15-yard line, bad field possession for almost the entire game, but especially early on. So you can go read all of those. I think there's 5 of them. And I'm hoping to get an article out on the game soon. I'm hoping maybe it's out when the people are listening, but it's just tough because, like I said, top of the podcast, traveling for work, and then, have to do a podcast, and then I haven't written it because I've had to travel. So I'd have to start it about 8 p.m. on Tuesday and get it out to you guys by like 7 a.m. on Wednesday. So not a lot of time to get it written out, but I think I'm going to try. I'm going to try to get one out there. So, be patient with me if I don't. If I don't get this out, there'll be a preview on the Ravens instead on Friday. And I used to like to get both, but it just, that becomes a grind when you work, because, a lot of us, we all work real jobs.
Real jobs during the day.
Some people, I think that, like this is all I do.
100%.
Like, man, I wish this was all I did.
Yeah, I'm like, no. I work 8 to 4 every day. Then we do the sports stuff. So yeah, no. Make sure you go check it out, All Bengals, and follow along, Bengals_Sands. You can follow me at LNDS Patterson. Thank you for listening to It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.